It's the ShopNotes Podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Phil Huber. It's time again for another episode. Along with John and Logan today, we're going to give a little shop update following the Thanksgiving holiday. And topic of the day is strategies for picking up a project where you left off, among other things. This episode of the ShopNotes Podcast is brought to you by Titebond. You want a glue that you can trust, and fortunately, Titebond has the glue you need to get the job done with confidence. From interior glues with strong initial tack and short clamp time, to exterior glues with exceptional strength and water resistance, look to Titebond, the right glue for your next project. For more information, visit Titebond.com.
Okay, can we start off this episode with a confession that I have?
Yes.
Okay. There is one thing that John Doyle does that drives me absolutely nuts. Okay.
Whoa! I didn't realize it was like
nope.
Out of the gate.
Nope. And I'm saying this knowing that I'm opening up myself to a lot of things that I probably do that annoy everybody else. Okay.
All right.
The single and only thing that John does that annoys the crap out of me. He has a tendency to mix red oak and white oak, especially when it comes to plywood backs. So like we could be building this beautiful white oak piece and he'll come in carrying a piece of red oak plywood. Mm-hmm. And I get it. That's what we have in the shop, right?
Yep.
Like it is what it is. My confession is I am currently doing the same thing. Last night started to work on the window trim for my office, building the window cases.
Sure.
I had at one point planed down some burr oak, I think, for I don't know if it was for the windows or if it was just for trim or what it was for. Started cutting that up. I only had one piece of that. And then I started pulling some other oak out of the rack and planing it down. Got everything like kind of pretty much cut and stuff. Put them all next to each other. I'm like, what the hell? Half of this is red oak, half of this is white oak. And I'm looking at it like, does it matter? Does it really matter? And it doesn't, because they're not. So none of this is like true white oak and true red oak, like northern red oak. And so like you don't have that like huge difference. I'm sure these are like subspecies. Like one of them's probably a jack oak or a black oak or so, like they're close-ish. Enough that it didn't jump out at me right away. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to roll with it. But I felt like I had to get it off my chest because it was wearing on my conscience that I've secretly judged John for the last 7 seasons.
Or not so secretly judged.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I did that just in the recent episode when you were building the tool tote. We needed like 1/4-inch plywood bottoms.
You did.
And it's like, it's not going to matter.
Right.
Plus, like the bad side of the red oak plywood usually it looks like white oak, so you just like flip it
around. Yeah. I know.
But I definitely did that in the sideboard from a couple seasons ago.
100%.
Yeah, it's the side panel, so it's like thought I could get away with it, but it kind of sticks out.
I mean, to be fair, for that episode, our initial plan was to resaw solid wood panels.
Yes.
For that sideboard.
Out of the burr oak,
Out of the burr oak. And as we got going along, we're like, ain't nobody got time for this if we're going to get this episode done.
Yep. So, I'm not faulting John for it.
Right.
I'm just saying it drives me nuts.
I wouldn't
and
typically
here I am.
choose to do that, but sometimes it's got to
I know. I get it. I understand it completely, and that's why I'm not faulting you for it. I'm just judging you.
I remember it's probably 20 years ago now. I was building a Christmas present, like tip out garbage can for my sister and just trying to scrap stuff together. And I had a bunch of hickory that I was doing and was doing the door, and I got all done. And I was like, I think that's an ash panel in the hickory door. So.
And is it still that way?
Yes. I just went with it,
All right.
Yep.
So just rocked it.
Nope, I get it. Yep. So it is what it is. At this point, I'm just kind of using. The problem is with a lot of this bur oak and some of this red oak, which I'm gonna have to do a little research to figure out what species of red oak this is, because it's not a true northern red oak. We don't get northern reds very often here, and it's not pin oak for sure. I think it's probably like a jack oak or something. It could be a swamp white. No, it's a swamp white oak. Anyways, it has some really nice like ray fleck, and that's kind of what I'm going for. And the reason that I'm using it instead of like either stashing it away for a project or selling it is that along with that ray fleck, there's a lot of knots and defects. Like almost like what looks like wormholes, but they're like pinky sized. So
Whoa.
Yeah, like they're like just like big voids in there, and I don't know if it is like a branch that died and the knot fell out of the tree and then it healed around it. I don't know what it is. There's just some big voids.
It may be where somebody was trying to get oak sap from
yeah, probably
spring
that,
for
yeah.
like oak syrup.
Yeah, probably. But like it's kind of interesting. It's a good way to use it. Like it's just gonna be in my office. Like doesn't really matter, Right. So that just was. Yeah, I filled a lot. So Phil and I did, or was that just me? It was just me. I guess you did a video for them. Not for them. You did a video on the Durham's Rock Hard Water Putty.
Yes.
I did a sponsored video from them. But they are local to Des Moines, and they brought us a bunch of cans for the video I was doing. So I grabbed one of the 4-pound cans. I'm like, this is a lifetime supply. After filling voids, it is a 3-project supply.
Yeah.
Because I am mixing a bunch of I had a little thing of India ink from something.
Okay.
So I mixed up the India ink in it. It didn't get pure black. It got like grayish black. So just is what it is.
Okay.
Better than seeing insulation poking through.
There you go. Which is a curious side quest here in woodworking. Like, what pragmatic steps do you take in a project in order to get the project done? In the sense that the people on the internet would be horrified by violating some sort of purity ethic or whatever. It's the same way with parenting, and the three of us are parents, and there are things that you do as a parent that are entirely pragmatic. Mm-hmm. And once you have children past a certain age, anytime you see a new parent that's like, well, I finally broke down and insert pragmatic step in order to be able to get a good night's sleep or whatever. And you're like, you're all right with that. That's okay. We're not judging here.
Yep. Yeah. The only problem for me on the parenting side is that I have teenagers and then a break and then elementary age kids. And it's the teenagers calling out, hey, when I was a kid, I didn't get away with this. Or it's like, hey, you take over. You know it all.
Right.
So
you're like, we were rookies with you guys.
Right. We were just learning. We've perfected it now.
Yeah. Yeah. You were the oopsie kids. Like we just kind of figured it out.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yep. I will say some of this oak, there is some cracks on the inside of the cases. Like it's that type of stuff. Like I would never use it in a real project. Because when we felled these trees, there was some heart pull on it. So the center of the tree kind of pulled out a little bit. So I got one board. I'll have to see if I can grab it here in a second. That has like really big, like the end of the board on the inside looks like the bristles of a broom.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's pretty heavy. Check this out. That's the inside.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So she's pretty squishy there, but I think I got enough to screw into, and the outside face looks great.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, you know what? Doesn't matter. Would I use it on a project? No, absolutely not. But window cases? Absolutely.
Right. I mean, there definitely is an A and a B side to hardwood boards in many instances.
Always.
And, you know, even within like a furniture piece, you can have structural pieces that will never see the light of day. You know, that I've done. Like when I built that sideboard for my sister, like it's one thing to say, you know, I'm only going to use premium, well-selected, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, it's like, these are the boards that I have to work with.
Yep.
And this piece has a nice face. The inside face is a little janky and the bottom edge isn't really what I would like. But if it's the lower back rail on a sideboard
that goes up against the wall.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I find myself, especially with walnut, doing that with sapwood. Like,
right.
I will tuck like if sapwood's only showing on one side, I'll tuck that on the inside of the case.
Right.
So if you look on the inside, it looks like a zebra, but that from the outside does not.
Yeah. I'm going to justify my decisions on that is when you look at historic furniture that has survived, you see very similar things.
Yep.
So that's
I think especially on historic furniture, because there's a pit saw somewhere that guys are ripping boards off of a piece of, you know, off of a tree.
Yeah.
You're not going to tell them, hey, this isn't good enough. They will throttle you.
Right.
Like after the guy spits all the shavings out of his mouth, he's coming at you.
All right.
So, yeah.
So Jack Oak, is that related to like jackalopes?
I think so, yes. Cousins, I think. Not as tasty. Allegedly.
Right. Do you have now, because oak species are so varied and based on what you're saying there, are there hybrid oaks?
Oh, I'm sure there are.
In the same way, like here in Iowa, we have red foxes and gray foxes, and then every so often, you know, the two tribes come together and you have hybrid foxes.
Yeah. I'm sure you do. I guess I don't know plant genetics, but like I have to assume that to some degree, John went to school for this. I shouldn't be talking right now.
Yeah.
He was, you know, artificially pollinating trees in the woods, right?
Crossbreeding them.
Crossbreeding.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to assume at some point, like, they're all a little bit of a mutt somehow, right?
I don't know. That's what I'm asking.
Or is there like square pollen holes for bur oaks and there's round pollen holes for pin oaks and they don't fit together?
I think that's our next podcast, The Birds in the Trees. We're going to have like a special guest on to like explain it to us.
All right. We need a forester or somebody in the audience, or if you know somebody who really should be helping us out here,
God, that was
please make sure that you comment very angrily in one of the comment sections.
Dendrology, husbandry expert.
There we go. Yeah. Or an ent.
Yeah.
If you know of an ent, a shepherd of the trees that could help us out here with some backstory, that would
preferably from Fanghorn.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's funny.
Yeah. So there we go. See, now we're just, this is a ways of building audience participation and interaction.
Yeah.
Because when we flail about like waking up in the middle of the night, trying to maneuver your way through the house and stepping on Legos and Okay. Here's a question that I have that I want to pose to you two and also to the audience is, we're recording this in the week after Thanksgiving. And prior to Thanksgiving, I had started the first 2 classes of a 4-session class on building a tool chest or a small chest for the Des Moines woodworkers. And I've been building it along with the students. And so I had the class, and then we had ShopNotes magazine go out. So I set that aside. Then the week of Thanksgiving, came back to it and was working on it yesterday, putting some trim pieces on, where I had thought that past fill had ripped all the base trim pieces to the same width. So I was just mitering pieces and then starting to stick them onto the chest with glue and nails. And then as I got like the second or the third, well, I did the 2 end pieces and then was doing the 2 front and back pieces. I realized that as I was putting the front and back pieces on that, no, I did not cut them all to the same width, which is a crazy mistake to feel when there's wet glue on the back side of a piece. 2 other ones are nailed on.
It just makes it really hard to push through the table saw.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I've done that. Been mitering and table sawing pieces with glue on 1 or 2 edges, and just gotta be careful.
Yep. Does glue set off a saw stop?
That's what I always wonder too. It's like,
Right.
How long do I have to let this panel set up before? But
I just
hasn't
bypass
triggered
it.
it yet. Yeah.
just bypass.
You just turn
I
turn the
do.
safety feature off.
Yeah, I mean,
Just
and you
always-
can't, like, you
just
legitimately
always keep
can.
it off.
Yeah, and I do. I don't always keep it off.
Yeah.
But like, if there's something that I'm like, oh, this is really questionable.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, she gets turned off.
Right.
Okay. So anyway, having learned my lesson, and I was able to fix it because I have a shoulder plane and you could just buzz off the pieces that were too high. I just put them on with a common reference edge at the bottom edge, and then whatever the top edge was, I just evened it out with a shoulder plane. Worked fine. I'm making it out of white pine, so it didn't take long to do. So the question is when you come back to a project or you set aside a project, do you guys take notes or any kind of writing down of like, this is where we were at? And then if so, or if not, like, what's the reorientation process?
Right.
Surprise,
Yeah.
generally.
Yeah. As you were talking, I was thinking it'd probably be a good idea to keep notes of where you left off and what you need to do next. But have I ever done that? No.
No. Yeah.
It's just like,
Yeah.
where was I? What do I need to do? So yeah.
Well, it's funny because like I finished what was supposed to be a 2-class on building this little mantle box, turned into a 4-class class.
Mhm.
A
That's
4-session
value.
class. Yeah.
Mhm.
And we finished that up on Tuesday this week. And every single one of those, I'm like, all right, guys, we got all these parts cut. We're done there. And they're like, no, we didn't. We didn't get to that last time. I'm like, oh.
That was
I
supposed
thought
to
we
be the
got further
homework.
than we did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's funny because, like, I guess I don't ever find myself starting and stopping a project. I just don't finish projects.
Yeah. You just stop and don't.
Yeah. I'm thinking in particular of my wife's office doors that I said on a podcast 2 years ago I'd have done in several weeks, and I never did.
I think
But
it
I
was
guess-
actually longer than 2 years ago, if
It
we
might have
dig that
been.
one back out. Yeah.
But I guess if I'm like building a furniture piece, generally I'm working on it nonstop, like
Right.
the whole way through. So like, I know like you took off for, a little Thanksgiving vacation and stuff. I don't ever really find myself doing that. So like, I guess I don't, or if I do, I try to get to a good stopping point on that section.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, okay, don't touch the base trim until I come back,
Yeah.
and just block it apart. But I try to block stuff like that in sections anyways, because I'm shooting photos and I'm trying to pace myself to pages of a magazine.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, carcass done. I can go do what I need to do, screw around, go chase ducks for a day or two, and then come back and say, all right, carcass is done. Let's do drawers now. Do drawers. Okay, go chase ducks again or whatever I'm doing.
Sure. Yeah. And the funny part was, as I realized that the base trim pieces were uneven as I was putting it on, that's when the memory triggered of past self saying, now I just got to make sure that I trim all these to the same width, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
On how that kind of works. Okay, so you don't do that on furniture projects, but let's maybe contextualize a little bit and say, like, I don't know, we'll just make something up here. Say you have this old tool that you're trying to get back into running order, and it's delayed for various reasons. How do you figure out where
this is, Phil? How ironic this is. I'm going to spin you guys.
Okay.
Check out that sweet drill press that is put back together.
Yeah.
Not painted, as everyone will, I'm sure, comment. I did not paint it like I planned on.
Which is fine.
So yes. Okay. Eating a little bit of crow here because as I started to put this drill press back together, okay, pulled it apart because the bearings were bad.
Right.
Get to a point where I'm like, oh, I should really paint it since I got this far apart. Got to a point where I'm like, well, shoot, we need this drill press kind of for this class. I can just put the thing back together real quick. It doesn't take that long. I'm like, where did all these little screws come from? So luckily on a machine like this, I can, because I did not exactly remember how this thing went together, I was able to pull a parts diagram to see how everything sat. So, yeah, I guess I try. It's a lot of trial and error, I guess. See, the thing is, like with a machine, like it either goes back together right or it doesn't. So,
Right.
like you put it back together, stuff doesn't work. It's like, okay, that wasn't the right way. I know how not to do it now. Same way with John. Like, should I write notes? Yeah, I should. Actually, there's a few on the machine side of it. There's a few YouTube channels that I follow. Hand Tool Rescue being the main one that does a lot of like restoration of stuff. It's called Hand Tool Rescue, but doesn't do hand tools. Like it's like, gas powered snow shovel from the 1930s. Like it's ridiculous stuff. Like all of this ridiculous stuff that you're like, wow, I'm surprised they made that because people died when they made it. That's how his channel started, is he actually videoed himself doing it.
Yeah.
So, I guess, yeah, I probably should take notes, but ain't nobody got time for that. At least, from a furniture standpoint, the one project I do have sitting there that just is unfinished, like and half started, and I'm gonna finish it at some point, is that stupid disc sander in the studio.
Oh, yeah.
Like I remember where I got with it. Like table's on, motor needs on now, and then shrouds need on. So like you got to build all that stuff. I know where that's at. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I work slow and I just I look at it more than I do it.
Right.
So I don't know.
No,
Definitely have done stuff where I'm like, wow, dummy, what are you doing?
This episode of the ShopNotes Podcast is brought to you by Titebond. You want a glue that you can trust, and fortunately, Titebond has the glue you need to get the job done with confidence. From interior glues with strong initial tack and short clamp time, to exterior glues with exceptional strength and water resistance, look to Titebond, the right glue for your next project. For more information, visit Titebond.com. I think there's also been projects, usually if I have a project that is taking a long time, there are very few instances where it's totally out of my mind like this one was because of the holiday. Yeah. There's a lot of times where a project takes a long time, but in that time, it's still occupying your mind where I'm making doodles in my notebook about it or writing down little checklist items of this is what I need to do next on it. Because I usually end up doing that with like a little Post-it on projects where I'm in a meeting here at work or something, and I just write down like, this is the project. These are the things that I, are up next on the punch list. So it's something that's in my head a lot. And it was just kind of weird to have something like this where it just was totally
completely
gone.
Slipped it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to preface this, Phil, and say that you're going to get comments. It's the old age stinking up on you.
Right.
No, I think you have definitely a leg up on at least myself, and I know John doesn't do it either. You have that notebook that you always have your design stuff in, so like that is a good spot to like doodle notes. You know what I mean? I don't have that. At best, I have a SketchUp model on my computer that's like 2/3 finished. The rest of them just figuring it out.
Yeah.
I've got web browser tabs open. Does that count?
Yes, you do.
Yes.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. But
so how about you, John, even for work, like you're designing projects and then, you do TV show stuff or you get a end of issue where you're reading through articles as well or whatever and have to come back to it.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of wasted time of like bouncing around and reorienting and figuring out where I left off and lack of organization there. Usually in the design process too, it's like every time it's like I saved, right? As I'm going through, and then the computers were all reset at work, and it's like, oh, I didn't save. Now I need to learn to save every 5 minutes, but it's always easy doing it the second time because you did it once.
Yeah,
so
right. You could do it.
Right. So there's a lot of that and bouncing around, and
I guess that's what. That's where I boil down to is I probably waste a lot of time by trying to figure out what I was doing, where I could save myself some time by writing notes. But
yeah, I do like the idea of having, trying to get to a stopping point section wise or whatever, prep wise, and then being able to stop there and just let it go. 'Cause that, I don't know, should give you an idea of what needs to happen following that. But
Yep.
I think part of the issue is I've been doing this project a little bit here over lunch hours as I get ready for classes, or I've been doing some of it at home. So normally I have either a project going here or it's in my home shop. And I think having a fixed place on it gives me like a geographical memory to know where stuff is.
Oh, yeah.
But when I, cart it around in my car a lot, then I don't know. It's like easier to remember stuff in a book than it is online. It's like I can see that it was on a left-hand page in such and so section rather than I scrolled down 3 times with my scroll wheel and then 2 with the arrow, and there it is.
Yeah.
So, all right, that was my fun observation today or yesterday as I was putting that on.
Yeah. So, switching gears, it's been 2 months now. Almost 2 months since we did WIA, right?
Right.
We had a planning session this week on 2025. For everybody wanting to know if we're going to do it again, we are. To be determined. Probably the same weekend, it sounds like.
Yeah, we're working on nailing down the specific weekend with a venue, and it's probably going to be, it'll be either the 10th and 11th of October or the 17th and 18th, Friday, Saturday.
So
like we
just
did.
block both weekends. But my question is, did either of you guys get to go to Ben Strano's presentation on 3D printing for the shop?
I did. I was.
How was it?
The first one. He did a great job because he framed it in the sense of how he does 3D printing.
Yep.
Also how he does his woodworking and what he's using his 3D printer for in relation to that.
Okay. So
also just the fact of his, I don't know, is personality the right word? I don't know that that's it, but just how it makes sense for him. And he has an inclination towards that kind of tooling anyway.
Yeah. So having gone to that, does that make you see the value of having a 3D printer available for your shop?
Oh, yeah.
Does it?
Yeah, it does. Especially since I think even the one that he currently recommends as like a starter 3D printer
is the A1 Mini.
Right. It's like $200.
Yeah.
You know, so $200 is not a huge investment. For many people, $200 is a pretty small investment. And when you consider woodworking tools in general, that's a pretty small investment.
That's buying a new drill and battery.
Right.
Now, I asked this because, might surprise you guys, I bought without thinking. And I'm pretty sure as we were starting our podcast, FedEx pulled out of the driveway, and I think the 3D printer I ordered just arrived.
Okay.
And I've been texting Ben back and forth about it, like, hey, I'm going to be picking your brain. And he's like, I can do that. Because, okay, I told my son, I think I told you guys this. Like, I told my son's been asking for a 3D printer for a long time. Okay. And I told him, like, hey, if you learn how to model stuff in 3D, he's 10 years old. If you learn how to model stuff in 3D, I will buy you a 3D printer. Thinking he's going to go dink around for 20 minutes, say it's too hard, and then be done. An hour later, he comes out, he's like, come look at what I did. I'm like, God, you little a-hole. And so I had to follow through with it. So I asked Ben, which one he suggested. He suggested the Bamboo Labs A1 Mini, I believe. And after doing a little bit of research and talking to Puppy Doc a bit, as we were loading up the sawmill for him to bring back to Wisconsin, he suggested a different one. And I started kind of diving down a little bit of a rabbit hole with it. Like, the two there's several types of filament you can use. The standard stuff is fairly brittle, I guess, and doesn't have a whole lot of tensile strength. ABS plastic is a lot tougher, and that's the stuff that's kind of, I don't want to call it indestructible, but it's definitely more like a heavy duty use item. I'm like, well, if I'm gonna buy a 3D printer, I'm gonna buy one that can print ABS plastic, because I got all this vintage machinery that I might not be able to have a part, or I can't order a part for it. I could potentially print it out of ABS. I'm thinking immediately, my mind goes to this pattern maker lathe. I would really like to print a router holder so I could put a router in the compound.
Oh, right? Sure.
So, like, yeah, I can make it out of wood, but it'd be way cooler to 3D print it. So I ordered one that, it wasn't their high-end one. It's kind of a middle-tier one, but it can do the ABS stuff. So now I'm like, okay, now to really justify this to my wife, I have to figure out ways to actually use this in the shop and, like, see if it, I guess it's kind of an experiment. Like, can I fit it into my standard shop stuff?
Right.
My standard shop workflow. Because I've tried that with lasers, I've tried that with CNCs, and neither one of those just fit into how I work at all.
Okay.
So it's one of those things that I'm kind of like, I talked to Chris. I have a laser and a CNC that are going back into the shop there because I just don't use them, and I don't want them sitting around if I'm not using them.
Right.
I'd rather somebody there not use them. So, so like, it's an experiment to see if I will actually use it and if I can actually make it make sense in my workflow. I'm thinking more for jigs and stuff like that, not necessarily, making parts for a project, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Mm-hmm. For me, the biggest issue has been knowing that if I go down that path, then it would be a good idea to really understand a 3D modeling program.
Yep.
Like Fusion 360 or something like that.
Yeah.
To be able to do something more than just download somebody else's design and print it.
Yeah.
Which isn't a bad way to get involved with it.
No.
And I just don't know. I sometimes feel like I already have limited shop time. So if I'm going to convert some of that shop time to learning a 3D modeling program, then that feels like it's taking away from actually making something.
Yeah. And I agree with that. And I felt that way with SketchUp, like trying to figure out SketchUp. Like, I mean, I'm young enough that I had CAD classes in high school. So like I kind of was taught this a little bit like during my actual shop classes in high school. So SketchUp wasn't a huge transition, but like, yeah, trying to figure out how to, and I think there are ways to take SketchUp into 3D printing, I'm pretty sure, into 3D printing files. But yeah, like everyone's like, oh, you need to really learn like Fusion or Inventor to be able to really make the most out of it. And not only it's a big time investment to understand those programs and learn them, but they're also really expensive.
Yeah.
That's the other thing is I don't know how much we pay for Inventor licenses, but they're several $100s a year.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can like, if you join like I don't remember what it was, like the Airplane and Aviation Engineering Society for $40 a year, you get a free copy of it. So it's like, you can do like, there's things you can do like that, but yeah, I get what you're saying, Phil. And that is one of my concerns where it's like, okay, how much time am I really, if I need to say, draw a part for this drill press, like, A, is it going to look like somebody built it out of Legos? Because probably. And B, how long is that going to take me? So,
yeah.
So what was the program your son was using to 3D model with? Minecraft?
Believe it or not, no, they actually do make like kid 3D modeling programs. So he found one of those that's like it's like a very basic, like it kind of guides you through like the 3 or 4 functions that you need to put stuff together. And then it's like, hey, go play. And yeah, so he did a bunch of stuff. So like maybe I need to get like the Fisher Price 3D modeling program.
Maybe.
And that'll do it. I don't know.
Yeah. Could be. Well, that'll be kind of cool to see what you come up with for that. That would be.
Yeah, well, and it's like one of those things like, I still have to have these bearings cast for my jointer. Like I could 3D print it to make sure that is going to work before I send that out to have a mold made,
Right.
So like there are definitely some, I think there's a use for it for sure. Would it be cheaper to pay somebody to do it? Maybe. Like, I guess, even this being a middle of the road 3D printer wasn't in the realm of woodworking tools, as you said, Phil. It's all perception. Wasn't terribly expensive. This printer was on sale on Black Friday for $4.99. So like I have more than that in my chuck for my lathe. So it's one of those things, like, I would pay somebody more than that to model and print the bearings for my jointer mold. So
Right.
it's all perspective and relative, but it'll be interesting to see. Part of me, he's like, who really likes that kind of aesthetic? Some of the stuff that Dylan's used hardware wise really could easily be 3D printed. Like, I was thinking, like, the little knobs he uses for some stuff, so for some shop made tools, like, those are easily 3D printed if you wanted to.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I know, I'm pretty sure Chris has a 3D printer, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
So,
yeah, he 3D Ben a few years ago made a transfer gauge that he designed and 3D printed.
yeah.
So, and then he posted the link to the file for that on the Fine Woodworking site. And then Chris printed one for me.
Yeah.
And then, so I have it. So, yeah.
I mean, and it's stupid little things like that are like the small little nice tools to have that you're not going to go buy, but man, if you just print it, like,
Right.
why not? I'm thinking like a protrusion gauge for sharpening jigs, like, yeah, you could screw pieces to your bench, but if you could just print it, why not? Or, I have a couple angle blocks that I use to set up the platform on my bench grinder for sharpening lathe tools. Like, I could actually print one that fits it correctly instead of being a universal one. It's a little stuff like that. Like, I don't know. We'll see. This is an experiment.
Mm-hmm.
There may be a Bamboo Labs P1S for sale in 3 months. I don't know. I could be trying to sell it. I don't know.
Stay tuned. Right.
Yeah.
No, like I've thought about it, and seeing what Ben and Chris have done has been really kind of eye-opening on what the capabilities are. And,
yeah,
I like to tinker with shop jigs or tools or accessories or add-ons or something like that, just to do different things. And I can see where that would be a huge thing.
Yeah. I guess from my perspective, it's always been one of those things, like, the 3D printers are really good at printing tchotchkes, and I hate tchotchkes.
Right.
And to be completely fair, that's why my son wanted one. My son loves tchotchkes. Like, he wants little, Minecraft figures sitting on a shelf that he's 3D printed. And just yesterday in one of the machinist groups on Facebook, I saw a guy had, he was not giving away the files, but he had designed and 3D printed little miniature Kennedy tool chests or toolboxes, like the little stacking styles. Like, kind of cool. I don't want one,
right?
But like, I get it. I do get it. And there are, I think there's uses for them. There are limitations on them as well, because it still is a molded plastic. It's not a cast part. So, although we had Matter Hackers here at WIA. That they put it through a hot, lack of a better term, a hot glue gun nozzle that's on a CNC carriage, and it prints it, right? But they do sell, some of these companies sell filament that is a powdered metal that when you buy the 1 kilogram spool, you might be paying $200 for the spool, but that also includes you printing the part, sending it to them, and they basically put it in a kiln that basically turns it into a solid steel part.
Oh.
Which to me is crazy. And I was talking to the guys there about it, and they're like, yeah, we have printed stuff, brought it in and like machined it with our vertical mill in half, and it is solid. Like, there are not air pockets, there are not bubbles, there's nothing. It is solid. And it's interesting, the potential for that. I don't know that I don't know that I'd ever get to a point where I need to print a part out of metal like that, but it is a possibility.
All right. I think that's a good stopping point. If you have any questions, comments, or smart remarks, you can leave them on the comment section on our YouTube channel or send us an email, woodsmith@woodsmith.com. Questions for today's episode, like what are your pragmatic solutions that you've come up with for projects? Do oak trees hybridize? And how do you pick up a project you've set aside for a while? And then finally, it's all word problems today. Is there a 3D digital woodworking tool that you've had your eye on? 3D printing, laser, CNC router, whatever. Miami sound machine, all of that. I'd like to know about that, so you can put that in the comment section. We can address that in future episodes. Special thanks to Tightbond, who have been instrumental in helping us keep our stuff together at Woodsmith for 45 years. So we'll see you next week, everybody. Bye.